Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
We have been discussing about the causes of decay of cultural property, and in that case we have, in our last lecture we have discussed basically the problems due to the gravity and due to the sunlight and other problems, and we started with the rain, how the rain in different forms can cause a problem. So, we will continue with that. So, if you remember, we said the faulty disposal of rainwater is the most frequent causes of deterioration, and it can wash against the surfaces, and especially if it is some porous building materials like brick and certain kinds of stone, then it is a problem. And rainwater penetration to the individual materials of the structure causes more damage, though I have also given some of the reference which I have been. So, I mentioned the salt crystallization, continual wetting and drying, and the action of frost and ice. So, we will discuss these three independently, that what are these issues actually. As I said, that it is not only one aspect or one factor which causes the problem, there are many other things combined which causes some of the basic issues. Now, let us see the external causes of decay, the penetrating rain. The rain penetration causes the timber components to rot and insect attack. So, as you can see that this is again in Narajol, this is a place where you can see that this is some of the roof damage which has happened, the flat tiles which are there, and there are the timber post and the beam and the rafters which are there, and because of the salt the water penetration through the roof, these are the timber elements, are not only they are causing the rot of that, this also causes a very good environment for the insect to attack, a very different type of insect. This is also Narajul, the one of the roof of that. You can see that what type of damage has been happening. There are the timber blinds and other things where the major problems, and this is also a major issue in that, because where the timber beams are actually resting within the machinery, these places are getting affected due to the water penetration and this rotting of the timber, and that is ultimately will cause a structural problem to the entire structure, and the roof may collapse. Because the damage of the embedded structural timber. So, these are one after another, it happens as a subsequent things, and if it is not taken care of very initially, it can be very severe. The external cause is that rain and moisture, because rain also the humidity and other things, it is not only those type of structural and the other elements, but also damage to the interior. Sorry, there is a spelling mistake. So, there is an interior which has happened, and the moss and fungus growth also causes because of that. And as you can see that this is Shantiniketan Vishwabharati, where there are the murals, the wall paintings which are under restoration, and due to the dampness and other aspects and the moisture content, this has got damaged and deteriorated over the time, and a group of artists are restoring that. This is again a small temple, a flat roof temple in West Midnapur, where you can see that there not only the penetration of the rain is causing a problem of the severe crack at the vault, it also is causing a problem, a lot of the moss and fungus, and also the rising dampness which is causing a problem. And this is also a small temple where it is then in the small relief is there. It is a very important element of this type of temples, a very strong European influence, where you can see the moss and fungus and other things, which is all caused due to the rain and the humidity and the moisture contact. So, and this damage is happening, it is one by one, all related, that if it is not taken care of, it also becomes a very good environment for the moss and fungus to growth, and there are a variety of the moss and fungus, the biological causes which gets the ideal environment to grow in certain environment. So, these are some of the issues which happen due to the rain, accumulating rain, or due to the rise in the humidity. The other problem which is also related to the one, especially in the cool climate, the action of frost, snow and ice. As you know that many places this causes a severe thing. Even India is a vast country, there are areas where we have a very high degree of this snow accumulation. This is Shimla, as you can see that there is a lot of snow has been accumulated on the sloping roof, and if that is not structurally sound, this also can cause an extra load and can cause a severe structural problem. It can sort of cause a destruction to the machinery itself. It also affects the members of the parapet and pinnacles. As you can see that all of these these are a problem. It can cause because of the heavy sheets of snow which can cause a problem, and possibility of the roof structure to collapse under heavy load. So, these and in addition to the water seepage and other issues, moisture penetration, these also and of course, the flow of the water, as I say, all the gutters and the pipes can get blocked due to the snow and this temperature drop of the temperature. This has to be taken care of there. Now, and as I say, the blocking of the gutters, these are the very severe things. So, depending on the climate, depending on the likelihood of some things happening, and depending on the material, one has to understand that what are the likely causes of decay in a particular scenario. And now, also I said that the salt crystallization. Now, then there is a groundwater. Groundwater can happen because of the accumulation of water or because of the high groundwater level. And if the groundwater contains the salt, either the salt can come with the groundwater, or the salt may be there in the building. Some of the bricks, because of the material it has been there, can be a high accumulation of the salt. So, now when the salt comes in the thing, the salt crystallization is one of the major things of the porous building materials. You can see that this is North Bengal, that the salt crystallization has happened, and you can see clearly the marks which has happened when the salt is coming out, and here you can see the spalling of the plaster because there is a rising dampness and along with that the salt crystallization which is happening. Now, as I say, the salt crystallization can happen due to the change in the groundwater level, due to the rising damp by the capillary action, and due to the crystallization is damaged due to dissolved salts and evaporation of the groundwater. So, what should one do about this thing? So, generally what is that is, one is that to be stop the groundwater ingress into that, and especially the porous building material acts as a capillary, the pores in the porous building material, and they sort of sucks the water, and along with that if the salt comes, and when if the subsequent dry season, when the water the fabric gets dried up, then the salt dissolved salts come out and they accumulate on the surface. One of the measure which generally taken is to make a damp proof course, and as you say already a structure is there. So, there are ways how to insert a damp proof course in a historic structure. This is one, but one thing is sure that generally sometimes the mistake which is done is to this type of salt crystallization, the surfaces are covered with some sort of a paint or something, or sometimes tiles are given to cover that, and that is something which must never be done, because here actually the fabric is breathing out, and if the process of breathing out is stopped, then what happens is that it goes farther up, So, one should not stop that the possibility of the water which is within the fabric to come out of the surface. And then of course, if it is a lot of these coming out very regularly, then of inserting the damp proof course and others are there, but never cover the surface with a sort of a some paint or some material which stops or does not allow the water which is within the fabric to come out. This is absolutely important to remember. Now, let us see what is happening. Let us example that this is when there are the places where there is days of heavy rainfall and then there is a drying period. So, there is a continual drying and wetting, there is a cycle of drying and wetting happens. And in a porous material what happens is that the water tries to fill up the pores, and with the water there can be the dissolved salt which may be with the water, dissolved in the water, or may be within the material. Now, what happens, as we can see that when the water comes there, it will be followed by a drying period when the water tries to recede away, but this salt particles they try to sort of crystallize, and this repeated cycling and the waiting and the drying period, that is something we have to see why the movement of the water through the pores, maintaining the movement of the water through the pores is so important. For example, we see that what are the process, that in this case what is happened, that there are pores. These are the different, depending on what material it is, there can be a small pores, there can be the large pores, there can be a combination of the large pores and the small pores. So, as we can see that when there is a rain, the waiting period, the water is coming through the pores, and as you know that capillary action, what happens, the smaller the diameter of the pore, the higher the water can go into, or the more the water can go into due to the capillary action. In the larger pores, the ingress is much slower, so you see that in the waiting period the water comes, and then the water tries to fill up the smaller pores and the larger pores. That is what is happening here. So, when the that is the waiting period, and then it fills up all the pores generally if the rain continues for a longer time. Then this is the waiting period what we see, but this waiting period is actually, so this is the waiting period, and then it will be followed by a drying period when there for few days there will not be any rain. So, what happens is that the water is there, and then what we see here is the salt which is dissolved either is a part of the material or in the water. These dissolved salts try to crystallize and fill up the pores. Now, in the drying period what happens, the water recedes from the pores, and these crystals they remain within the pores, and they will like to come out of along with the water, and they generally come out and then try to get deposited on that, and this is those white salt like things what you have seen on the surface of the wall, and that is not bad because still one can, it causes some problem to the fabric, but it still it can be washed, it can be cleaned, and it is actually not, if it does not remain within the fabric, then it is not much of a problem. That is why to allow the water to come out is absolutely important. Now, what happens that in a case that these crystals become so big that they sort of blocks the narrow pores, and they do not allow the water which is accumulated inside to come out, then what happens, it causes a sort of a pressure to the internal sort of the material, thrust happens, and that causes a cracking of the building. So, if the crystals are not allowed to come out and others. So, as we say, the insertion of the dam proof course is definitely needed. The making a proper drainage system around the structure is important, so that there is no water accumulation, cleaning of the gutters, and the making a proper drainage system, draining out the water, making a sort of a plinth protection. These are all very important steps, and along with that, before the rain starts, that seeing that there is no blockage of the water. And so, these are some of the things which is this continual waiting and drying period, especially where there are heavy rains for continuous few days and followed by a drying period. And if there is a salt in the material or in the water, dissolved salt, then these type of problems happen. This is what is called the salt crystallization damage. Now, the salt dissolved in the water, or if there is a salt content in the material, porous building material, and if this is combined with a wind, it can cause some other severe problem. We will see that, but so we are coming to the next natural cause, which is the wind. Now, wind as such, I'm come to the water moisture problem later on, but wind as such can exert a strong directional force. The exposed sides of the building can therefore be subjected to pushing action, and while the protected lee side can experience a suction. So, there is a difference between the protected side, the leeward side, and the windward side, and these can behave differently. Same like the sun, a side which is more exposed to the sun and which is very drying up and cool down very drastically, will have a different type of problem, whereas the other side of the building, which is or the fabric which is cooling down very slowly, that probably will not happen. So, one has to also understand this phenomena. So, this is one that wind creates a problem, and especially the tower spires and the bell towers, which also can move in the high winds. This is a very good example, the Norwich Cathedral. You can see that in England there is a 99 meter spire which has been found to move to and fro almost 3 inches or 75 millimeter in a high wind. It was actually moving. And it is a very important case, because at one time the movement and the deterioration of the spire stone was such that the authority decided to tear down the spire. And it is Sir Bernard Filden, which I have been referring a lot. He was appointed as the architect of that conservation project. He says that when I went up to there is a lot of writing, and he has also spoken on various occasions that when he went up he could feel the spire moving, but what he did is that rather than tearing down, he talked to the structural engineers and other, he decided to put a stainless steel wire, and also in addition consolidation and some of the replacement of the damaged stones, and because of that the original spire is still there. It is moving, but just the moving is not bad, it gives strength, so that even the movement. So, one has to understand even high structures or high rise parts or elements or component of a structure, it can cause a problem, and always is not necessary to demolish that, but there are ways to find. So, this is a very important case where the problem of the spire actually happened due to the wind load. I come back to the water moisture problem, which I was talking about, the alveolar erosion, where it is dangerous, more dangerous than the salt crystallization damage, and which we are many of the places which especially near the seashore and porous building material, this alveolar erosion happens. This is the shore temple in Mahabalipuram. As you can see that most of the features there have been blurred and other, and what happened is that where the wind, the salinity, the moisture, all of this combined, and the direction or the force of the wind speed is so high that it actually causes the alveolar erosion. And when the alveolar erosion happens, this is something what happens, like this is a pock mark on the building fabric, and this loses. Now, let us see that what really is actually the alveolar erosion, what happens. Now, let us see that let us say it is a porous building material. So, let us say these are the bricks, okay, and I am also almost exaggerating this part. So, between the bricks there are these sort of joints, and these actually are the areas or the through which, and apart from that within the brick also there will be the fine sort of a capillaries through which the water is likely to come out. Now, what happens is that in that case, if there is a salt within the water, the salt will like to sort of come out of the, if they come out on the surface, then as we say the cross, I mean I am of course emphasizing a lot, is out of scale, but they will deposit and they can be washed away. But when there is a heavy wind, that For example, there is the very high sort of a wind is coming and hitting the surface, which happens in the Mahabalipuram Atta. Then what happens is that before this salt can come out of the surface, this salt actually gets, even before it is coming out of the surface, when it remains within the surface, it gets dried up, the water is sucked out, and because such a high speed of wind is happening. And so, what happens is that these crystals, rather than coming out, the water cannot come out, and it is getting dried up very quickly at a very high rate. So, the crystals actually remain within the material, within the pores or within the joints of the material, and because there is that they remain there. So, what happens is that at a certain time these surface, they become a sort of separates from that, and it falls off. I mean, it is not actually in scale. If you see the pock mark, this happen. So, this actually falls off, and there is a sort of a hole, local hole happens. And when this local hole happens, what happens is that there is a local eddy current which forms, which is much faster. And when this local eddy current forms, it again does not allow the further water to come out, and they will deposit further inside of the surfaces. So, that happens is that in that case the surface actually, then the next layer is that this surface will get sort of a damage, and this sort of a progresses, and then we will see that because of that local eddy current and a very high speed, then gradually we see the sort of a holes developed in the surfaces. So, this is called alveolar erosion. Alveolation means holes, and erosion. This is quite dangerous, because as you have seen that because of that these type of the holes and what these types of pockmarks of the whole surface happens, because the salt remains within the fabric. So, this is something which is sort of a problem. And now, the question is that how you sort of take care of that. Then the idea is that you have to sort of see that the speed of the wind becomes less. So, you have to sort of give a curtain. What is that curtain? In case of Mahabalipuram and many other cases, a barrier is formed. In this case, a casuarina trees, or these trees are being planted, so that the wind which is coming, it actually the speed is getting reduced. And then of course, along with that the insertion of the damp proof cores, or the reducing the salt, draining away the salt from the structure, all these are very important. So, this is the what I said, the salt crystallization damage and the alveolar erosion. As I say, the alveolar erosion is much more dangerous. It affects the material much more, that this can't be sort of rectified until and unless you change the stones, and which is definitely the next one, and which is a biological and the botanical causes. As we have seen in some of the cases, that how in a very rainfall area and other the different things which are important. So, in the biological botanical causes, which is our next aspect, the animals, different types of animals and the problems associated with them. These are also causes a lot of problem. The birds, the bats in the historical structure, and of course, we can't stop them. We have to see that how to reduce the damage or how to stop them, because there are also societies which are also very concerned about the animal protection. So, we have to see a balance. And we will see that what type of damage happens. The insects, different types of insect, depending on a particular weather condition or a particular type of material. These are also the problems area. The trees and the plants is, if not taken care of in a very initial stage, this actually can be a very disastrous for historical structure. The fungi, the different types of fungi and different types of mold. There are thousands of species of molds and leeches, each has its own habitat, and own sort of an environment which they like, their different food habit, they eat on with the different, survive on the different types of built environment. So, that is why we need actually the people who specializes, who know the behavior of different types of molds and leach, and until and unless we have a clear understanding of that, we can't really investigate or take precautionary measures. The different types of algae and the moss, there are so many species which are there, and these are very important to understand what are the reasons for their decay and other things. And as you can see that this is Maluti, which is the terracotta temples in Jharkhand, border of West Bengal and Jharkhand. More than 100 terracotta temples are there, and you can see that the what type of damage has happened due to these biological aspects of the moss and fungus. And as I said, that depending on what material, and also a variation of the fungus and various algae and the moss and as their habitat. So, it is very important to take the expert advice for that. What again, the while cleaning that, one has to be also very careful, because it should not affect the material in a negative way it when cleaned. So, this is a holistic approach, one should take care of that. So, we will take that those aspects into our next lecture, that where we will talk in detail about the various biological and botanical causes, and what type of broadly what type of damage and decay that cause to our historical structures.